Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast. I'm Marc Givler. Got Kevin Noon with me here this evening. Emergency pod for everyone tuning in right now. Ohio State has landed 5-star defensive tackle Justin Scott out of Chicago St. Ignatius Prep. I would love to sit here and tell all you guys that we knew this was coming. We knew it was coming this evening, right now, and that was going to be Ohio State. And we've just been holding this, waiting to release this episode for you and waiting to tell all of you that this was happening tonight. But I would be lying on that one. There will be some victory laps I think I'm going to be able to take in July. This is not one of them. I would have taken the field against Ohio State. I knew he had a great visit. I knew it pushed Ohio State maybe a little closer to the top. But I never in a million years would have thought a week later-ish that we were going to be doing the commitment episode. Kid who's played this pretty tight the whole way, and many thought Ohio State was maybe running third or fourth coming into the official visit weekend. Kevin, we don't get shocked by this stuff much. A lot of times we have stuff ready to go. We have everything's in place. Either the kids told us or we've figured it out one way or the other. This was not the case. How shocked are you in a day and age where nothing seems to stay a secret anymore, where nothing really leaks? How shocked are you by this on like a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I'd say probably an 8 or something. And it must be something about Chicago kids, because the last time I truly was shocked, and I don't want to say shocked, we went to Jamarco Jones's ceremony in Chicago across from New Comiskey. I think it was New Comiskey at the time, whatever it is now, US Cellular, whatever. And we're like, this could be Ohio State. This could be Michigan State. We really don't make these kinds of trips without knowing for sure. And, we're sitting here with Justin Scott. I certainly was feeling a little better about him coming out of the visits, but I did not have any expectations now. The Ohio State commits have been tweeting some stuff. Oh, just wait till you see what we have here. I'm like, must be talking about, potentially Marquise Lightfoot moving forward or something like that. I even told a couple of friends that. I'm like, I have no idea. And then Alex Lightman texts us and says, get to Twitter. And it has been a mad scramble since.
Yeah, we saw the tweet from what Devontae Armstrong, I think, put it out. And I'll tell you where my mind immediately went, because he just announced his commitment date. My mind went to KJ Bolden, who I actually have in the class for Ohio State right now. So I'm sitting here like, oh, yeah, Devontae, I agree. You're probably getting KJ Bolden at this point. But so thanks. And then I was like, well, who could it be that I'm not thinking of? And it was just like, oh my gosh, it's Justin Scott. So look, we see it in the comments on our videos all the time. Yeah, another quarterback, another receiver, another whatever. Get some defensive guys. Here's a defensive guy. Here's a big one. And not only this checks like Ohio State fans should be over the moon right now. This checks all the Ohio State frustration boxes. It's a defensive lineman. It's a defensive recruit. It's a Midwest kid where Ohio State fans feel like they should get every good kid from the Midwest. And on top of that, it's the big 300-pound defensive tackle you guys always complain that you don't have. So this thing, I better not hear a single negative comment about this from an Ohio State fan. This is everything you guys ever wanted. So, Kevin, how important was this for Larry Johnson? Because we're talking about the defensive tackle board recently, and it was kind of like, okay, Justin Scott and Jaden Jackson and kind of Dominic McKinley, but after that, it's a little thin.
Right. And then the one tech, Caden McDonald, the true freshman. He's somebody who could get into the mix as well. This is just a huge get, because I think if you look at this season, there could be a serious exodus at defensive tackle. And if the season is successful, like Ohio State fans hope it will be, generally the exodus is even larger. Guys have their ring and they're ready to go on. If you're draft eligible, may as well go when your stock is high. But, even without that, you could still see 3 major pieces leave after this season. So defensive tackle was so important, and you hit the nail on the head. I was talking to a buddy who covers Illinois, and he was like, well, what do you think about Marquise Lightfoot in Illinois? I said, well, at least you're a hat on the table, because Illinois recruits the state of Illinois, except for the Chicagoland counties, which is kind of a little bit of a Wild West situation. Notre Dame does pretty well there. Ohio State's been able to dip its toe in that pool some, but certainly nobody has that on lockdown. But being able to get Justin Scott is just so huge. And I think even more so than talking about his 5-star rating and top 20, 25 type player nationally, regardless of position, so many things with it. But this is everything that Ohio State needs. And I think that it's something that other defensive linemen who may be kind of on the fence could sit there and say, all right, I could play with this guy. I could play with this guy. They're doing the right things there, because we have not seen necessarily that generational player, the Bosa or the Young or somebody like that. And while Ohio State certainly is going out and getting the Jack Sawyers of the world, going out getting the Zach Harrisons, the JT Tuimoloaus, landing the interior lineman is a big deal, because a lot of times you're getting guys and you're having to, pack weight on them and slide them inside. Justin Scott is, right out of the box. He is your one tech.
And this kind of goes back to a long time conversation we've had on the site, on the podcast, everything I've had with our community is, why can't Ohio State, why do they struggle so much getting these 300-pound defensive tackles? And it's like, look, there's maybe 5 of them nationally in any given cycle that aren't like, overweight, sloppy, slow off the snap. Like there's really only like 4 or 5 of these types of guys in any given recruiting class. And like 80% of them come from the South, and they don't want to leave their moms. It's just like, it is the hardest thing in recruiting to do, is to get some 300 or Georgia and get them away from mom and away from the home cooking and everything else. And sure, do that here. They've been able to keep one kind of in region, which is kind of what we've talked about in the past that's why it's so hard to go into Georgia and North Carolina to get these guys. Well, you see how this works in reverse, didn't want to, distance from home really helped the Buckeyes here.
Ohio State must have had the honey fried chicken done or something, going back to the Marvin Wilson days or whatever. I mean, it's this is big, and you're right. The vast majority of the skilled defensive tackles, of the one tech types, not necessarily a 3 tech, are located south of the Mason-Dixon line and probably east of Houston. I mean, is kind of where, is the small window of where these guys are, and they don't want to. A lot of them don't want to go far from home. I mean, you talk about, the big baby mama's boy or whatever that'll kick your butt, but, still really emotional type guys. I mean, that's a lot of these guys. They're gentle giants in a lot of ways.
All right, let's get to the tape. So here we go. A lot have been talk about offensive guard. I don't see that. This is a straight defensive tackle play.
Right.
I know there was some talk about that early, but here, look at how quick he is off the snap at that size. I mean, just the explosiveness at 300 pounds. They're standing up on the edge as a pass rusher, coming off the edge and just swallowing the running back. So he's a really unique player. Like a lot of guys in Chicago, I wouldn't necessarily say his competition level is the best, but the way he can fill at 300 pounds, but also has the quickness to kind of shoot gaps and get after the passer, is really a special skill set. So you give him a year at Ohio State to kind of get his feet wet and get used to things, get some coaching from Larry Johnson. And this is a guy who could be a really dominant interior player. And, as we've said, for years with Larry Johnson, 230 pounds, 330 pounds, doesn't matter. If you don't have a great get off, he's not recruiting you. And Justin has a really impressive get off at his size. And there he is again, just kind of overpowering in the interior. And it's a new age of football too, where yes, having pass rushers on the edge is still hyper important. But I think if you ask just about any quarterback, they will tell you that they would rather get something they can kind of see and feel off the edge than having their guard or center driven right back into their face, because that's when you really get into problems offensively, is when the opponent can get an interior pass rush. So this is something that Ohio State does have with Michael Hall already in terms of getting an interior pass rush, but to get it from like basically a nose tackle is kind of a unique situation for them, where they've kind of maybe played some undersized guys in the past to get that type of pass rush and burst from their one tech, but now they're going to get it in a true 300+ pound body, and this is again, this is about big of a pickup as you could have expected in this class. I mean, I think there's guys in this class that they're going to get that are going to even be ranked even higher than Justin Scott. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith is already. So I think that, and I think Mylan Graham may be too on most sites, but I think this is going to be as important as any pickup they get in this class. I don't think there's going to be one guy in this class that we see them land where like, oh, that's even more important than Justin Scott. Maybe as important, I guess. There's a couple maybe you could argue for, but I just think filling needs and getting an elite player at that position in a year where, again, I was talking about this the other day on the board. Their prime D tackle group was like 2.5 guys, and they're trying to take 2, and it's like, okay, like if they don't get Justin Scott, I don't think we were thinking kind of like, it might be the field over the Buckeyes there. And what happens then? Now it's not so much of a concern. You've got Justin Scott. You're still in a solid position with Jaden Jackson. That's kind of an Ohio State Texas battle right now. Dominic McKinley visits from Louisiana. We'll see. I know they're trying on that one. We'll see how that goes. I kind of have to see it to believe it on a big time kid from Louisiana at defensive tackle, but they're, in the mix. They've kind of made up some ground, kind of got in on them late. So you're less worried now, because even if you'd love to make, Jaden Jackson be, number 2 in the class, but if it's got to be kind of, if you have to search a little further down the line here, the next 6 months or whatever it is, you're less concerned about having to do that now that you've got Justin Scott in the mix. So this is big on all levels. Man, and how early does he play, Kevin? I mean, I think he sees snaps as a freshman.
I think the necessity is going to be there, and that's not against anybody else that they brought in. I mean, we've seen Jason Moore's weight go up, and obviously under the watchful eye of Mickey Marotti and the nutritionist and everybody else that's in the program. I mean, that it's being done the right way. But if we do see an exodus after this season, I mean, there's going to be a necessity. But I mean, my question too is, what does Jaden Jackson think about this? I mean, being in this, I mean, we've talked about Marquise Lightfoot. Let's talk about Dylan Stewart. I mean, do you sit there and do you have these guys who know each other from the camp circuits, know each other from official visits? So like, damn it, we're going to just do this all together. We're going to all be part of a class. I mean, obviously Ohio State has been able to bottle that in terms of wide receiver recruiting under Brian Hartline, the recruiting warlock. But, if they can sit there and do that here with the defensive line and put together that class, it will alleviate a lot of the concerns that Ohio State fans have had. And I think it'll do a lot to knock the wind out of the sails of the Notre Dame and Michigan fans that have been talking a lot of, on socials about Ohio State classes only being a bunch of speedy receivers and there not being any tough guys. Well, let me tell you, Justin Scott is a tough guy.
Yeah, the 7-on-7 team label could go out the window here if they land a couple more of these guys that all the rivals like to use. If you're one of the defensive ends they're recruiting, you have to love this. Not only is that going to help you against the run, it's going to kind of make a formidable front four. But talk about getting that pressure in the quarterback's face a minute ago. What's the first thing the quarterback does when he gets interior pressure? He has to roll out. He's going to, this guy, Justin Scott, is going to make the quarterback roll into you if you're a defensive end. And every defensive end likes free sacks. So that's got to be big. And even if you're another defensive tackle in this class, you've got to love, especially if you're a 3-tech, and I think Jaden Jackson would probably fall into the 3-tech category. You have to look at that and be like, wow, I'm never going to see a double team. Ever. I'm never going to see a double team.
Yeah, you look at this and you roll out, and the thing is that a wide or a running back is not going to be able to do much with Justin Scott barreling down. So do you have to sit there and do you roll out? Do you try to double there? Do you roll out? Do you have to keep a tight end home as a blocker, putting less guys out into patterns? So I mean, this is just so instrumental, and I'm sure that you look at Jim Knowles and the defensive staff, and just they've got to be just over the moon about the things that they're going to be able to do. And, Ohio State a lot of times had 1 3 tech out there and then had another 3 tech out there. Didn't necessarily have the big one, or you had guys that were just maybe a little miscast, a BB Landers or somebody like that. This isn't a BB Landers situation. And, BB had a hell of a career at Ohio State. I'm not taking anything away from him, but this is the guy, this is a guy I want in the trenches next to me. If I am an Ohio State football player, I want this guy next to me. If I'm going out to a bar, this is a guy I want like right on my shoulder. I mean, this is a huge get. I mean, it really is. You try to go back and think about high impact defensive tackles that Ohio State has been able to recruit in terms of, that high 4-star, 5-star type of rating. And they just don't really exist. I mean, they're just not a lot of them out there.
Yep, these are the toughest guys to find, I think. They're the guys who are the least common occurring in nature, as I like to say. Just hard to find guys with this size that can move. It really, really is. It's just a lot of them. We call them offensive guards. We don't call them defensive tackles. That's the difference between a defensive tackle and an offensive guard, is the ability to move. So this is huge. Surprise, Ohio State fans. Early happy 4th. Some big fireworks here. Might get some more fireworks tomorrow. Marquise Lightfoot is on deck to decide. Fellow Chicagoland guy.
Chicago kid, exactly. Could Justin Scott show up at his ceremony or something like that? I mean, it's
we shall see. So stay tuned. I predict a very, 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 very good month for Ohio State on the recruiting trail in July. And I think August will also be a very, very good month. So stay tuned to BuckeyeHuddle.com and also here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And you can also download this and all of our other podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. In fact, while you're listening to this or watching this, you should head right over and go to our Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast and listen to Tom Moore and Tony Gerdeman talk about the 4 Ohio State targets who have July announcement dates set, because one of them isn't even Justin Scott. So there's 4 more targets with announcement dates set for the month of July. And we got a couple for August with KJ Bolden and Edric Houston. But the July guys will be broken down by Tom Moore on that show. So that's a good kind of double dip there on your recruiting there. So go check that out as well. But yeah, it's a great time to be on BuckeyeHuddle.com though. So get on our board and chat with us and ask us questions and celebrate the big commitments that are coming for the Buckeyes with a bunch of fellow Ohio State fans. Great community there. So thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we will see you soon.